Have you ever wondered why Chinese takeouts taste better than your cooking? Same exact recipe, but Chinese takeouts remain superior. Today, we are counting down 31 clever cooking tricks that Chinese takeout restaurants use every single day, and honestly, they are hoping you never figure these out. Let's get into it, starting at number 31. They temper their proteins before cooking. Chinese takeout kitchens never pull chicken or beef straight from the refrigerator and throw it into a screaming hot wok. They let the protein sit at room temperature for a solid 20 to 30 minutes before it ever touches heat. This single habit creates more even cooking throughout the entire piece of meat. When cold protein hits a hot pan, the outside overcooks while the inside struggles to catch up. Room temperature meat cooks uniformly, locks in juices better, and develops that gorgeous exterior browning that home cooks can never seem to replicate. This is step one of the advantage, and most people do not even know it exists. Number 30. They use extremely high heat and they mean it. Your home stove probably maxes out at around 12,000 BTUs. The commercial woks in Chinese takeout kitchens operate at over 30,000 BTUs, and some professional burners push past 100,000. That gap is enormous. The intense heat creates something called wok hay, which loosely translates to the breath of the wok. It is a smoky, slightly charred, deeply complex flavor that is physically impossible to achieve on a standard home range. Chinese chefs have known for generations that fire intensity is not just about speed, it is about flavor chemistry. The Maillard reaction and caramelization happen so fast at these temperatures that they produce flavor compounds that simply do not form at lower heats. You can turn your burner all the way up and you will still fall short by a wide margin. Number 29. They season their woks obsessively. A seasoned wok in a Chinese takeout kitchen is practically a living thing. It has been used thousands of times, layered with carbonized oils, and it develops a non-stick surface that no new pan can replicate. Every time the wok is used, the seasoning deepens. Every time it is cleaned, they use minimal soap or none at all. They dry it immediately and rub it with oil. This polymerized oil layer does two things. It prevents sticking and it adds a subtle depth of flavor to every single dish cooked inside it. Your brand new stainless steel pan or even your ceramic nonstick cannot compete with decades of seasoned cooking surface. Number 28. They always have their mise en place completely ready. Walk into any Chinese takeout kitchen during service and you will see dozens of small containers filled with pre-measured ingredients lined up and ready to go. Sauces are pre-mixed, vegetables are pre-cut, proteins are pre-marinated, aromatics are pre-minced. This is not just efficiency. This matters for flavor because when everything is ready the moment it needs to go in, nothing overcooks waiting for you to fumble with a bottle cap or chop a clove of garlic. The speed and precision of Chinese takeout cooking is inseparable from their preparation habits. When you cook at home and scramble to find your soy sauce while the garlic burns, that is exactly the moment the dish starts to fall apart. Number 27. They marinate proteins in baking soda. This is a technique called velveting, and it is one of the most guarded advantages in Chinese takeout cooking. Before cooking, chicken, beef, or pork gets tossed with a small amount of baking soda and left to sit. The alkaline environment breaks down the proteins on the surface of the meat, making it incredibly tender and silky. That impossibly soft chicken you get in Chinese takeout dishes is not magic, it is chemistry. The baking soda changes the pH of the meat's outer layer, which prevents it from toughening up when it hits the hot wok. You only need about a quarter teaspoon per half pound of meat, and after 30 minutes, you rinse it off before cooking. That tender texture is the result of this deliberate scientific process. Number 26. They use cornstarch in the marinade too. Alongside the baking soda, a coating of cornstarch goes into the marinade mixture. This cornstarch does something remarkable during cooking. It forms a thin, protective barrier around each piece of protein that seals in moisture and creates that slightly glossy, lightly coated exterior you see on takeout chicken and beef. Without it, moisture escapes aggressively when the meat hits heat, leaving you with dry, stringy pieces. With it, the protein stays juicy, the texture stays tender, and the surface picks up sauce more effectively because the coating clings rather than letting sauce slide right off. Number 25. They add egg whites to protein marinades. This is another layer of the velveting technique. Egg whites combined with cornstarch create what Chinese chefs describe as a silken texture on the outside of the protein. The egg white proteins coat each piece, and when they cook, they form an extremely delicate, almost creamy barrier. This is why takeout chicken feels fundamentally different from pan-seared chicken. The velveting trio of baking soda, cornstarch, and egg white is arguably the single biggest gap between professional Chinese cooking and home cooking. Master this and your proteins will never be the same. Number 24. They velvet their proteins in oil before the final cook. After marinating, some Chinese takeout kitchens take the extra step of par-cooking the velveted protein in oil that sits around 280 degrees Fahrenheit. This is much lower than frying temperature. The protein gently slides through warm oil for just about a minute, and it sets the coating, partially cooks the meat, and preserves that impossibly silky texture. When the protein goes into the hot wok later, it just needs a quick toss with vegetables and sauce to finish. The oil velvet step is what gives certain dishes like beef and broccoli that slide off the tongue quality that you cannot get by dropping raw marinated meat directly into a blazing hot pan. Number 23. They use dark soy sauce strategically. Most home cooks only know regular soy sauce, but Chinese takeout kitchens keep both light and dark soy sauce on hand, and they use them for different purposes. Dark soy sauce has been reduced longer, is thicker, less salty, and carries a rich molasses-like sweetness and a deep brown color. When Chinese chefs want to give a dish that beautiful mahogany color and a rounded sweetness that hits at the back of the palate, they add a splash of dark soy sauce. It is also what gives dishes that visually appealing glossy finish that makes takeout food look so appetizing in the container. A single teaspoon can transform the appearance and depth of a dish entirely. Number 22. They use Shaoxing rice wine constantly. Shaoxing rice wine is a pantry staple in Chinese cooking that most Western home cooks completely overlook. Chinese chefs splash this fermented rice wine into marinades, add it at the beginning of stir-fries, and use it to deglaze the wok. It has a nutty, slightly sweet flavor profile that adds complexity you simply cannot achieve with water or chicken broth as substitutes. More importantly, it helps tenderize protein, removes any raw or gamey smell from meat, and contributes volatile aromatic compounds that cook off quickly, leaving behind a depth of flavor that makes dishes taste like they have been cooking far longer than they actually have. Number 21. They use oyster sauce as a base ingredient everywhere. Walk through a Chinese takeout kitchen and you will find industrial-sized bottles of oyster sauce used in nearly everything. Oyster sauce is thick, savory, slightly sweet, and carries a deep umami punch that rounds out the sharp edges of garlic and soy sauce. Chinese chefs use it as a foundation in stir-fry sauces, as a finishing glaze, and even mixed into marinades. It is not just for oyster dishes. It goes into vegetables, chicken, beef, noodles, and more. The fermented oyster extract inside it contains naturally occurring glutamates that behave similarly to MSG, building that addictive savory quality layer by layer throughout the dish. Number 20. They always add aromatics first and fast. Garlic, ginger, and scallion whites hit the wok before anything else. And when Chinese chefs say fast, they mean 10 to 15 seconds of aggressive tossing over enormous heat. This quick bloom extracts and releases the fat-soluble aromatic compounds from these ingredients into the hot oil, infusing the entire cooking fat with flavor before a single piece of protein or vegetable touches the pan. At home, most people saute garlic on medium heat for 2 minutes until it looks golden. In a Chinese takeout kitchen, garlic goes in at maximum heat and within seconds it is fragrant and ready. The difference in oil flavor between these two methods is massive. Number 19. They cook in small batches deliberately. Even during a dinner rush where tickets are stacking up, Chinese takeout kitchens cook each order in a small batch in the wok rather than combining everything into one massive pile. This is not just about portion control. Overcrowding a wok drops the temperature dramatically, causes ingredients to steam in their own moisture rather than fry, and eliminates any chance of wok hei developing. Small batches mean the temperature recovers fast, moisture evaporates immediately, and every ingredient gets direct contact with the scorching hot surface. When you dump an entire family-sized portion into your skillet at home, you are steaming your dinner, not frying it. Number 18. They use a technique called the splash and toss. This is something that looks effortless when Chinese chefs do it, but takes real skill to execute properly. They tilt the wok slightly over the open flame, letting the oil pool near the burner, and a jet of fire briefly licks up and ignites the oil vapors. This controlled flash of flame chars the ingredients slightly, adds a smoky dimension to the dish, and dramatically amplifies wok hei. It is technically called flambeing, but in Chinese cooking it is more aggressive and deliberate. The result is a dish with a subtle smokiness that tastes like something between a restaurant grill and a stir-fry. It is a flavor dimension that home cooking simply cannot manufacture. Number 17. They keep finished dishes moving and never leave them sitting. Once a dish comes out of the wok, Chinese takeout kitchens plate it and send it immediately. They do not let a finished stir-fry sit in the pan, accumulating steam and losing texture. Residual heat continues to cook everything even off the flame, and allowing a dish to sit in a wok for even 2 or 3 extra minutes turns crispy vegetables into soggy ones and turns perfectly cooked protein into overdone rubber. Speed from wok to container is a discipline in these kitchens that directly affects the quality of what arrives at your table. Number 16. They blanch vegetables strategically before stir-frying. Broccoli, bok choy, and snap peas in Chinese takeout dishes always seem perfectly cooked, tender but with a slight bite, and brilliantly green. That is because many Chinese takeout kitchens quickly blanch dense vegetables in boiling salted water for 60 to 90 seconds before they ever hit the wok. This pre-cooking shortens the stir-fry time, meaning the vegetable spends less time in the intense heat and retains its color and structure. Salt in the blanching water seasons from the inside out, and the rapid transfer to a wok seals that season into every fiber. At home, most people just throw raw broccoli into the pan and cook it until it is soft enough, which completely destroys the vibrant color and crisp texture. Number 15. They finish with sesame oil at the very end. Sesame oil is never used as a cooking oil in Chinese takeout kitchens. It burns at too low a temperature and loses its flavor completely under high heat. Instead, a small drizzle goes in during the final 10 seconds of cooking or just as the dish comes off the flame entirely. This preserves its intensely nutty toasted aroma and flavor. A dish finished with sesame oil smells completely different from one that had sesame oil cooked into it early. The fragrance is bright, immediate, and unmistakable. It is one of the signature finishing moves that makes takeout smell incredible the moment you open the container. Number 14. They control sauce thickness with cornstarch slurry. Every Chinese takeout sauce that coats protein and vegetables in that glossy, clingy way was thickened with a cornstarch slurry, which is simply cornstarch mixed with cold water in about a 1:2 ratio. Chinese chefs add this near the end of cooking, toss everything together for about 30 seconds, and the sauce transforms from thin and watery to thick and glossy almost instantly. The cornstarch gelatinizes and creates a coating consistency that allows sauce to cling to every surface. At home, many people skip this step and wonder why their sauce pools at the bottom of the pan instead of coating the food. The slurry is the difference between takeout texture and home cooking texture. Number 13. They use chicken powder in addition to regular seasoning. Chicken powder is a concentrated seasoning blend made from dehydrated chicken, salt, and other flavor enhancers. It is extremely common in Chinese takeout kitchens and goes into soups, stir-fries, fried rice, and sauces. It is different from regular chicken bouillon because it has a more concentrated, cleaner chicken flavor without the heavy salt content of some bouillon cubes. Just a 1/4 teaspoon added to a stir-fry pushes the savory quality of the dish up noticeably. It fills in flavor gaps that plain salt and soy sauce alone cannot address. Most home cooks have never heard of it, but it sits in every professional Chinese kitchen without exception. Number 12. They use lard in traditional preparations. Before vegetable oils became the mainstream choice, traditional Chinese cooking, including many classic takeout dishes, used lard as a primary cooking fat. Some Chinese takeout kitchens still incorporate a small amount of lard into certain dishes, particularly noodles and fried rice, because its flavor is incomparable to vegetable oil. Lard has a richness and depth that coats the palate differently than canola or soybean oil. contributing to that indescribable quality of takeout food that feels more satisfying than home cooking. Even a small amount added to fried rice at the end provides a savory, porky richness that makes every other flavor in the dish more pronounced. Number 11. They add sugar to balance savory dishes. Salt and sugar are used together in Chinese takeout cooking in ways that Western home cooking rarely employs. Chinese chefs understand that a small amount of sugar, sometimes as little as half a teaspoon in an entire wok full of food, softens the harshness of soy sauce and vinegar, rounds out sharp edges, and makes a dish taste more complete. It does not make the dish sweet. It makes it balanced. This is a technique borrowed from the broader principle that flavor contrasts enhance each other. Sweetness makes savory more savory. The sugar is not a dessert ingredient in this context. It is a calibration tool. Number 10. They use white pepper instead of black pepper. This is a subtle but significant distinction. White pepper is what Chinese takeout kitchens use as their primary pepper seasoning, not black pepper. White pepper has a different chemical compound profile. It is earthy, slightly fermented, and carries a sharp heat that goes straight to the back of the throat rather than the tip of the tongue. That unique warming quality is what you taste in hot and sour soup, egg drop soup, and countless stir-fry dishes. Chinese chefs have relied on white pepper for centuries because its flavor integrates into dishes rather than sitting on top of them. Black pepper has a wonderful place in cooking, but in Chinese cuisine, white pepper is the correct choice, and it changes the entire character of a dish. Number 9. They save and reuse cooking oil for flavor accumulation. In Chinese takeout kitchens, the oil used to fry chicken or cook aromatics earlier in the day does not get thrown away. Filtered and saved, this oil carries the flavors of everything that has been cooked in it. Garlic-infused oil, chili-infused oil, and protein-flavored oil all contribute depth to every subsequent dish. This is part of what makes takeout food taste more layered and complex than something cooked in fresh, neutral oil. The oil itself is a flavor vehicle that builds over time. At home, people use fresh oil every single time and wonder why the overall flavor feels thinner. The accumulation of cooking history in the oil is an invisible ingredient that home cooks almost never consider. Number 8. Now we are getting into fried rice territory, and this is where Chinese chefs have a trick that shocks most people when they find out. They use day-old refrigerated rice without exception. Freshly cooked rice is too moist. Its individual grains stick together and turn into a clumpy, soggy mass the moment they hit a hot wok. Rice that has been cooked and refrigerated overnight loses surface moisture. The starch is retrograde and the grains firm up, and each grain separates cleanly in the wok. Chinese takeout kitchens prepare enormous batches of rice the day before and store them specifically for fried rice service the next day. When you try making fried rice with fresh rice and it turns into a sticky paste, now you know exactly why. Number 7. They add the rice to the wok in a single layer and leave it alone first. This is the step that separates good fried rice from great fried rice. After adding day-old rice to the screaming hot wok, Chinese chefs press it out flat and do not touch it for about 60 seconds. This allows the bottom layer to develop a slight crust in direct heat contact, which creates toasty, slightly caramelized rice flavors that mixing immediately would completely prevent. Then, they toss everything quickly to expose new surfaces. This cycle of pressing and tossing is what gives Chinese takeout fried rice that distinctly toasted flavor that home cooks cannot figure out. The rice is not just heated, it is deliberately allowed to lightly char in places. Number 6. They add soy sauce to fried rice by drizzling it along the inside wall of the wok. This looks dramatic and professional, but it is not just for show. When soy sauce hits the scorching hot wok surface before mixing into the rice, it caramelizes for a fraction of a second. The sugars in the soy sauce hit extreme heat, creating new flavor compounds before the sauce ever touches the rice. If you pour soy sauce directly onto the rice pile, it just steams the rice and adds raw soy sauce flavor. Drizzling it on the hot wok surface first toasts the soy sauce and produces a deeper, more complex, slightly smoky flavor. This is a foundational technique in Chinese cooking that home cooks almost universally skip because nobody told them it existed. Number 5. They use MSG and they are not apologizing for it. This is the one that Chinese takeout restaurants genuinely hope stays under the radar because the public conversation around MSG is messy and mostly based on misinformation. Monosodium glutamate is a salt derived from glutamic acid, an amino acid that occurs naturally in tomatoes, Parmesan cheese, soy sauce, and many other foods. What MSG does in Chinese takeout cooking is activate the umami taste receptors on your tongue more directly and efficiently than almost any other ingredient. When Chinese chefs add a pinch of MSG to fried rice, soup, or a stir-fry sauce, it is not replacing flavor. It is amplifying every other flavor already present. The chicken tastes more like chicken, the garlic more like garlic, the sauce more complex overall. Scientific consensus consistently finds MSG safe in normal culinary quantities. The reason takeout food tastes so satisfying and addictive while your home version tastes flat is very often MSG, plain and simple. Number 4. For noodle dishes, they undercook the noodles intentionally. Chinese takeout noodle dishes, whether lo mein, chow mein, or pan-fried noodles, all begin with noodles that are boiled to just underdone. If a noodle package says cook for 5 minutes, the kitchen cooks them for 3.5. This intentional undercooking is essential because the noodles finish cooking in the wok while absorbing the sauce and picking up wok heat. If you start with fully cooked noodles and add them to a hot wok with sauce, they overcook immediately and become soft, mushy, and structureless. Starting from underdone means the noodles arrive at the perfect al dente texture at the exact moment they should be plated. Chinese chefs use this technique universally across noodle dishes, and it is why takeout noodles always have that satisfying bite. Number 3. They toss noodles with oil immediately after boiling. Right out of the boiling water, Chinese takeout kitchens toss noodles in a light coating of neutral oil before storage or further cooking. This does 2 things. It stops the cooking process immediately by bringing down the surface temperature, and it coats each strand individually so they do not stick together into a solid mass. When the noodles go into the wok later, each strand is separate and free, meaning they pick up sauce and heat evenly from all sides rather than the sauce only coating the outside of a clump. At home, most people boil noodles and let them sit. Within minutes, they become a glued-together block, and tossing that block into a wok produces uneven, clumped results. The oil toss right after boiling is a 2-second step that makes a dramatic difference. Number 2. For orange chicken specifically, they double fry the chicken for maximum crunch. This is the trick behind the legendary crunch of Chinese takeout orange chicken that survives even being coated in a sticky, wet sauce. The chicken gets fried once at a lower temperature, around 300 degrees Fahrenheit, to cook through completely. Then it rests briefly. Then it goes back into oil at a much higher temperature, around 375 degrees, for another 60 to 90 seconds. The second fry drives out the remaining surface moisture from the batter and creates a rigid glass-like crust. This crust is structurally strong enough to hold up against the orange sauce without immediately going soggy. When you fry chicken once at home and dump sauce on it, the moisture in the sauce softens the coating within seconds. The double fry creates a crust that can actually resist that softening for a meaningful amount of time. Number 1. They constantly taste and adjust throughout cooking, not just at the end. This is the number 1 difference between how Chinese chefs operate versus how home cooks operate. Professional Chinese takeout cooks taste their dish at multiple points during cooking, not once at the end before serving. They taste after the aromatics go in, after the protein is added, after the sauce is introduced, and again right before finishing. At each point, small adjustments happen. A pinch more salt, a splash of rice wine, a touch more sugar, a few drops of sesame oil. The dish is being calibrated and refined in real time throughout the entire cooking process. Home cooks tend to follow a recipe rigidly, add everything as written, and taste only at the end when it is too late to meaningfully correct the flavor direction. Chinese chefs treat the recipe as a starting point and the tasting process as the actual cooking. That real-time intuitive adjustment is what creates the consistent, layered, complex, deeply satisfying flavor that makes you reach for your phone and order takeout instead of cooking at home. Start applying even 3 or 4 of these to your next cooking session, and you will notice an immediate difference. But have you ever wondered why Chinese restaurants' food tastes better? Find out here.